प्रेजेन्टेसन रहेको छ। प्रेजेन्टेसन गर्नुहुने सम्मानित उद्योगी सीएनआईका पूर्व प्रेसिडेन्ट मिस्टर हरिभक्त शर्माजी हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँ चाहिँ सीएनआईका फर्मर प्रेसिडेन्ट, उहाँलाई पनि म मञ्चमा आमन्त्रित गर्न चाहन्छु। उहाँको एउटा प्रेजेन्टेसन रहनेछ 20 मिनट्सको इन्डस्ट्रियल इन्भेस्टमेन्ट र जब सम्बन्धी। एउटा अर्को प्रेजेन्टेसन पनि रहनेछ हाम्रो मिस्टर बलजित वोहरा, टिम लिडर स्किल्स फर इम्प्लोइमेन्ट प्रोग्राम एसइपी एनहान्सिङ ह्युमन क्यापिटल। 20 मिनटको उहाँको पनि एउटा सानो प्रेजेन्टेसन रहनेछ। र प्यानल डिस्कसनमा हाम्रा प्यानलिस्टहरू हुनुहुन्छ आज मिस भवानी राणा, प्रेसिडेन्ट फेडरेसन अफ नेपालिज च्याम्बर इन कमर्स एन्ड इन्डस्ट्रिज एफएनसिसिआई की प्रेसिडेन्ट, मिस्टर गोविन्द नेपाल, फर्मर मेम्बर नेपाल प्लानिङ कमिसन, नेपाल प्लानिङ कमिसनको फर्मर मेम्बर हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँ चाहिँ प्यानलिस्टको रूपमा रहनुभएको छ भने अर्का हाम्रा प्यानलिस्ट हुनुहुन्छ मिस्टर एजाज आलम, उहाँ चाहिँ प्रदेश नम्बर 5 का सीएनआईका संयोजक, साथै गौतम बुद्ध मुटु अस्पतालका अध्यक्ष पनि र रूपन्देही उद्योग सङ्घका पूर्व अध्यक्ष रहनुभएको व्यक्तित्व हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँलाई म मञ्चमा आमन्त्रित गर्न चाहन्छु। साथै प्रसन्न केसी हुनुहुन्छ, डेपुटी टिम लिडर स्किल्स फर इम्प्लोइमेन्ट प्रोग्राम, उहाँलाई पनि म मञ्चमा आमन्त्रित गर्न चाहन्छु। उहाँ चाहिँ हाम्रो लास्ट प्यानलिस्ट हुनुहुन्छ आजको यस प्यानल डिस्कसनमा। हाम्रो प्यानल डिस्कसन मोडरेसन गरिसके पश्चात विभिन्न यसका सन्दर्भहरू हामीले डिस्कसन गरिसके पश्चात अहिले जस्तै हामीले क्वेसन आन्सर सेसनलाई इन्टरटेन गर्नेछौँ र त्यस तत्पश्चात हाम्रो चेयरबाट एड्रेस भइकन यो प्यानल डिस्कसन हाम्रो समाप्त हुनेछ।
र म अहिले अदर देन दि इन्डस्ट्रियल म्यानुफ्याक्चरिङ साथसाथै हामी ह्युमन क्यापिटलको जुन चाहिँ हामी कुरा गर्छौँ त्यसको विषयमा हाम्रा एकजना विशेषज्ञ हुनुहुन्छ। So I will request Mr. Baljit Vohra, he's the team leader of Skill for Employment Program. So he's going to talk on the human capital, जुन चाहिँ हाम्रो मानव संसाधन विकासको विषयलाई यसको इम्पोर्टेन्स कति छ भन्ने कुरालाई हाइलाइट गर्नुहुनेछ। Thank you, Mr.
Well, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come before you and talk about a very important subject. And I wanted to pick up from the ex-President CNI's very apt statement, just by starting about a little bit background about who we are. Our project is being funded by DFID as part of a collaboration with the government of Nepal to really change the paradigm of skilling in this country, with a view towards making skilling an integral part of economic transformation that the country is beginning to experience and witness, which you will see here in Tilottama, given the vision that the Mayor has shown. We are primarily focusing on what are deemed as the key sectors driving the Nepalese economy, which is basically the ICT sector, light manufacturing, agribusiness, construction, and tourism. In addition to that, we are also working on supporting ways in which we can reduce migration, but at the same time equip migrants that are going abroad with a view towards enhancing their capability to earn more, and at the same time be in a position to be gainfully employed and productive when they come back to Nepal. The way we are going to operate is through a new paradigm. The new paradigm for skilling, which has now been accepted and tried across the border, whether it is China or India or Singapore. I think those are the kinds of examples we have to bring to this country with a view towards making this an integral part. So the first and foremost thing that we have to look at is how do we create a basis for which we integrate skill building into the economic transformation strategy of the province. Unfortunately, what happens is we all talk about economic transformation, we talk about growth, we talk about sectors, but skilling is always an afterthought. It is never thought about an integral part. If at all we're going to develop these industries of tomorrow, who's going to run these industries? Who's going to operate these industries? If we don't have a proper scaling strategy that we want to put in place as part of a whole approach going forward. And this is where visionary municipalities, provincial governments begin to starting to understand when they talk about the provincial development plans, they talk about expansion, they talk about growth, they have to have a skilling strategy inbuilt into their whole economic growth agenda. And I'll just give you two examples. One example is the Yunnan province in China. I wanted to be just politically correct. I wanted one example from China, one example from India to be able to show you that skilling does indeed work. Here's an example of a province in Yunnan which has similar type of geopolitical situation, similar kind of socio-economic situation, larger number of migrant labor leaving the country, going into the other borders. The country was struggling, figuring out a way as to where the prioritization should be. So as part and parcel of the overall strategy, the province of Yunnan and the municipalities got together, had a conversation around what should be the sectors of priority. They established these sectors of priority and had the private sector become part and parcel of an integrated discussion on how skilling would support this economic prioritization strategy, where every single private sector that was want to operate in the municipality province would commit to a skilling strategy, would commit to basically not just skilling but also job placement. Similarly, in the case of India, if you look at the case of Gujarat, the whole Gujarat miracle that really happened years ago did not happen in isolation with just Modi sitting there and talking about what he wanted to do with the industry. He had a passion. He wanted to develop automobiles. He wanted to develop some other sectors. But as part of the commitment with automobiles, he spoke to the Marutis, the Suzukis, and the Fords of the world to come into the country, not only just establish factories, but also help skill up these technical institutes through a public-private partnership, wherein the employability, the labor that would be required to run these factories would be ready by the time that the automobile factories would be established in Gujarat. So it was a parallel effort in which the country worked together, the state worked together with the private sector to have skilling in the forefront of its strategy going forward. So the examples are there. There are states, there are provinces, there are countries that are doing this. We also need to follow from these examples and be able to put something which is more structured and more integral. Now, these sectors that have been chosen in Nepal are sectors that have the inherent potential to generate exports, to provide for exclusivity, they have the economic potential, and these are where we believe we can make a difference going forward. Now, over about 3 or 4 months ago, we did an interesting survey with companies across Nepal and in these corridors, province number 5 as well as all across provinces of the country. There is quite a bit of optimism, even though the growth is slow. Over 500 discussions with over 250 companies in Nepal has revealed that there is a sense of optimism in the context of how they see growth in the next 4 years. So in terms of growth, you see, whether it is commercial agriculture, whether it is light manufacturing, whether it is hydropower or tourism, there is a sense of optimism. Now, coupled with that optimism is also a sense of optimism about employment capability. How much employment can be generated in these sectors? And this is the conversation based on our own very discussions with companies, given that if the environment were right, they do have the potential to generate these numbers. Now, in order to be able to generate these numbers, we have to have a strategy in terms of how these sectors will, including skilling as an integral part of the economic growth and transformation agenda. Now, as part of this focus that we've done, we are estimating, based on our skills gap assessment that we have done in Nepal, we are estimating close to 630,000 jobs that can be created in the next 4 years across Nepal, across these different sectors. And if you see, there is a potential for light manufacturing that exists. Most of it is going to come from province number 5, where we all are located, as well as other industries such as ICT, tourism, and others. And in addition to that, we've also figured out as to what are those job occupations where we need to skill Nepalese. Whether it is in the construction space, whether it is the light manufacturing space, and given that we know what we have to do with the private sector, the focus of the province, the focus of the municipality has to be around areas where we can look at where the demand is and turn our training institutes into focusing on demand rather than just being supply driven in the context of training that they've been doing so far in Nepal. Now, even in province number 5, we also did a very focused conversation in province number 5. Yesterday, we were with the Honorable Chief Minister and the Provincial Planning Commission and the Ministry of Social Development, announcing and basically sharing with them the outcome of the study that we've done in province number 5. Within province number 5, we have talked to companies in the Butwal-Behrwa corridor, we have talked to companies in the Gorai-Tulsipur corridor, we've talked to companies in the Nepalganj-Kohalpur corridor. The storyline is that there is a sense of optimism in the context of how they see growth, how they see development, whether it is commercial agriculture, light manufacturing, there's a sense of optimism. In the next 4 years, they do see growth, and growth across all these sectors is being projected by the private sector, given that the environment is conducive and is supportive of what they want to achieve. In province number 5 itself, we are projecting in the next 4 to 5 years, of the 600,000 jobs that we talked about, 250,000 jobs will be created in province 5 alone if we were to basically make a judicious effort to work collectively with our private sector to come up with an integrated approach to scaling and job placement which is permanent. The jobs are there. It's just a matter of how we now get it all to work together. Now, of course, there are a lot of problems, everybody cites those, but we will share these presentations with you. The private sector has come up with what they believe are some key constraints that can be focused around each sectors, where a municipality, where a province can get into these sectors and have a concentrated conversation at a sectoral level to get to the next stage. Now, the most important one, after, of course, everybody blames the government, policies don't work, regulations don't work. But the second most important thing that companies have raised in our conversations with them is lack of skill and availability of good labor to be able to help take these industries to the industries of tomorrow. So this is where we have to focus. If we don't focus in this direction, we will lose the game. Now the approaches are very many. There are all different types of approaches that the private sector has been taking as part of the efforts to promote. Some are employer-led solutions where the employers working with the local municipality and with the provincial government will take on a training institute and develop skilling which is demand-led. There are other kinds of approaches. But let me just give you some examples. If you look at the heavy equipment industry in Nepal, you have at present about close to 1,000 operators that are working, and we have total equipment in Nepal is about 5,000. The projection, the growth rate is about 20% year on year with the construction that is happening. If you look at that, and if you look at the number of people that are skilled, you just have 1,000 people that are skilled. In a large part, a lot of these people may or may not even be licensed in the first instance, or also have not been fully trained to the extent where they are operating these machines wisely and properly. So the context is, there is a potential to generate 9,000 jobs in this very, very sector. And within province number 5, within Tilottama, there could be a lot of jobs in this particular sector because there's construction that's going on everywhere as we speak. So there are about 9,000 jobs. In addition to that, there is also service engineers that are required to support the maintenance of these machines. Believe it or not, there's not even one single Nepalese can service these heavy equipment right now. It's all coming in from India to service these equipments. Why can't we develop that capability here in Nepal, working with the private sector as part of a collaborative effort, if indeed there is a potential to generate those jobs? This is where we need to focus. So, just an example, we've just been having a conversation with JCB. I mean, of course, we can have a conversation with Volvo, we can have a conversation with everybody. JCB and Morang Auto Works now have a commitment. Morang Auto Works is interested in establishing a skilling academies across Nepal, primarily for the purposes of supporting skilling in the heavy equipment industry. How that will work, Morang with JCB will bring in the entire curriculum from UK and from India to instill this curriculum into these academies, which will be set up in Nepalganj, in Janakpur, and also in Kathmandu, where they already have an existing facility. What they're going to bring with it is the capability to co-invest, where a program like us, which is a UKaid DFID funded program, we will co-fund in this opportunity on a 50-50 basis. Private sector put in the 50%, create the skilling capability, we'll put in the 50%. And when I come to Tilottama, I will ask the mayor of Tilottama, along with the JCB and Morang Auto Works, Mayor, are you interested in having a skilling academy that will help you place jobs? Please provide me and make available land on a reasonable basis. We're not asking you to give us land for free. We're not asking you to land on a subsidized basis. Get us the land, start moving quickly, we will create this capability. So the examples are there in the context of practical approaches and how we can create an industry. Similarly, in the case of the Nepal Yarn Manufacturers Association, as you all know, synthetic yarn is one of the largest commodity exports of Nepal. We all know that, right? So we have some very progressive companies in Nepal that are trying to make a difference by exporting yarn. Now these companies collectively have committed to 4,000 jobs that they can create over the next 1 year if there is an ability to co-invest and create capability in these factories. We are talking to 4 factories. I'm just giving you an example. 4 factories in Nepal. One of them happens to be in province number 5, primarily with the potential to create training capability in each of these factories with a view towards doing training, apprenticeship, and permanent job placement. And this is where we also come in and contribute the 50% that's required to get these industries moving. Now, what do we expect the government to do? What I would like the municipal government to do, what I would ask the provincial government to do, what I would ask the Ministry of Labour to do, to be a partner through a pure PPP arrangement. Okay, we'll co-invest in creating infrastructure. Maybe you can support towards the apprenticeship cost for the first 2 or 3 months. Minimum wage, right? 13,000 to 14,000 Nepalese rupees. Get the poorest of the poor to be able to get these jobs. Contribute the minimum wage towards the apprenticeship cost, and then the government of Nepal, through the Ministry of Labour or the provincial government or the Tilottama municipality, can come up with a policy on supporting apprenticeship. Apprenticeship in factories that are willing to train and permanent employment. And doesn't have to be these 4 factories, it can be any factory. So the options are there, the solutions are there. It's just a way of how we basically move this thing forward. But this conversation with the yarn industry has moved forward. There's a commitment from the yarn industry to put in the money because they see potential. They see that they can generate these jobs. 4,000 jobs in a year with the potential to generate about 10,000 jobs going forward. Similar conversation in hydropower and construction. The Germans have been working on creating a training academy in Dading, working closely with Nepal government and the likes of IPAN NIA to set up this academy. There are 2 requirements we have in the area of hydropower. One is in the area of tunneling and the other is in the area of electromechanical works. Now in Nepal, there are hardly any Nepalese that are involved in the tunneling work and very few people that are involved in electromechanical works. If you're going to build these hydropower, we need to be able to create the skills. We need to be able to create the capability of making it happen. So with the Germans and with companies that are interested in co-investing, whether it is Voigt or whether it's others that are ready to put money on the table, where we co-invest with them and the private sector, coming in and creating an academy where they not only just train people in hydropower tunneling or in electromechanical works, but also are willing to place people in permanent jobs in their own very hydropower projects that they're working on. So there is a commitment on placement. Similarly, and a very interesting concept, for the first time in Nepal, through a collaboration that we have just forged between Jennings, which is a company out of the UK, and Amazon. Amazon has something called the Amazon Web Solutions. Amazon, everybody knows, is the largest company in the world right now that is providing a program called AWS Educate. This is a program in cloud computing that has been introduced for the first time in developing countries around the world, where they are training Nepalese, young Indians, young Bangladeshis, whatever they are, to basically be trained into job-ready professions in the area of cloud computing. Our universities are not teaching cloud computing. Our universities are just teaching one chapter of basic course of cloud computing or artificial intelligence. We are bringing AWS Educate, which is one of the global programs in Nepal for the first time, to be able to link up with 20 to 25 colleges, most of them in province number 5, because we know that the talent is here in province number 5, primarily with a view towards bringing in the state-of-the-art education ICT. The future of ICT is not Java. The future of ICT is cloud computing and artificial intelligence. Those are 2 things, and Nepalese can do that better than anybody else if they are trained properly and if they have the opportunity. So Amazon has a program on the cloud that guarantees employability working with the private sector in this field. So we have to look at cutting-edge industries. I want to go back to the point that the ex-head of CNI made. Think about industries that are more relevant to the jobs for tomorrow, not the jobs of yesterday. Similarly, another conversation that's happening with the Nepal Telecom Authority. As you all know, rural telecom infrastructure is the largest project of the government of Nepal. They are laying out broadband, they're laying out all optic fiber across the country. Nobody has realized that what types of jobs will be needed in the rural Nepal. In rural Nepal, you need these kinds of jobs on the very right. You need fiber splicers. You need network operating center engineers. You need linesmen. You need fiber technicians. A lot of these jobs are not being fulfilled by Nepalese. And if you're going to fulfill the demand that we have over the next 3 years to be able to support the largest infrastructure expansion that the government is making by way of its backbone infrastructure in the area of laying down optic fiber, then if we don't have people ready and able to do this job, where are we now? So the conversation is with the Nepal Telecom Authority, the conversation is with the ISPs, the conversation is with the telcos, and the conversation is with partners like us that are willing to co-invest in bringing state-of-the-art fiber splicing training capability. If it is happening in India, why can't it be brought to Nepal? They have a very interesting college that basically does all of this to help backbone infrastructure. The Reliance Geos of the world and the others of the world are basically relying on these kinds of training institutes to generate the fiber splicers and the technicians that are required to lay out the fiber optic and the cable that we need. We need to do this in Nepal if at all we want to develop our optic fiber industry, if we want to develop broadband in this country. So in terms of the key takeaways, I mean, all I'm trying to say is at the end, we need to integrate skill building in the development of priority growth sectors, because we are missing this conversation. Nowhere have I seen this discussion happening really in a concentrated fashion where people are looking at skilling as an integral part of economic transformation and growth. Very important. We need to create a platform where we can have these kinds of conversations. The conversations are not happening in an organized fashion. They're fragmented conversations. We do set our industry priorities. We need to sit with the private sector. We need to get the commitment from the private sector. Okay, we'll do this, but at the same time, we want you to scale. But we have partners like UKaid that can do this through co-funding and co-investment, which eventually lead to impactful results that we want to see. Forge government industry partners to scale up employer-driven scaling models. Gone are the days where we can go to the TVET, we can go to the training school and we say, give us this training, give us that training. Unless the employers, unless the private sector that I just talked to you about is committed to co-investing in these skilling models, we are going to go nowhere. So the whole dynamic and the paradigm for discussion has to change. Evidence has strongly suggested that the programs can only be cost effective if we have the private sector involved in the curriculum and taking co-investing and fully investing themselves going forward. And one final comment I'd like to make is perhaps the time has now come, as part of the conversation that we're having, and promise number 5 is thinking about this seriously, is to probably think about creating an employment and skilling fund, or creating a skilling mission. Like in Gujarat, you have a skilling mission. In China, you have a skilling mission that is really helping support the industries for tomorrow. Why can't we have that conversation here? We can have that conversation. And I would like to thank the Tilottama municipality, because in its own very small way, Tilottama has agreed to sign an MOU working with us, primarily for the purposes of establishing a small skilling and employment fund within the Tilottama municipality that can co-invest in ideas that we will collectively generate with private sector working in the area of Tilottama in those very sectors that the ex-president of CNI also talked about, that are the sectors for tomorrow. So that's my message, and I hope that we can get this passion going and get that commitment going to forge a consensus and get to skilling the right way, which should be an integral part of our economic growth strategy. Thank you very much.